better articulated. So, okay. Then we have, another concept. Many visual poems rely on verbal and visual prompts coalescing into a broader meaning. This poetry, however, clashes with a critical model that prioritizes verbal meaning and against which visuality is a point of peculiar fiction and misconception. So we have to take into consideration these problematics as well. I think I'm having to. Okay, so basically, the embodied cognition is a process that occurs within domains and across domains, and within and across communicative modes and tropes, making simulation essential to the interconnection and interpretation of both imagistic and linguistic cues in visual poetry. So we have the conceptual meaning, perceptual meaning, the verbal, the visual, to study, so it's very complex. Then, going back to the 50s, we have Charles Colson, which in my view, he's related, somehow he advanced this idea of embodied cognition when he talked about open poetic forms in the projective verse. He talked about the importance of breath, of kinetics, and the feel when producing a work of art. And so I think it's important to take this also into consideration, although it's very difficult to study. Okay, and then we have this unique artist and critic. He talks about the need. We need to study poetry in vivo. And he says that since the 1980s, poetry has moved away from the printed page and is witnessing the development of new poetic languages. Video, holography, programming, and the web have further expanded the possibilities and the reach of this new poetry. He says that now in a world of clones and transgenic creatures, it is time to consider new directions for poetry in vivo. The use of biotechnology and living organisms in poetry is a new realm of verbal, paraverbal, and non-verbal creation. So he has lots of different experiments, microbot performance, atomic writing, marine mammal dialogical interaction, transgenic poetry, and many other styles. This one, transgenic poetry, it's very interesting because it makes you, I mean, it's a very challenging notion. It goes beyond the normal channels of producing poetry. Let's see, okay. According to him, new technologies culturally mutate our perception of the human body from a naturally self-regulated system to an artificially controlled and electronically transformed object. So he talks about the parallel developments in medical technologies such as plastic surgery and neuroprosthesis have ultimately allowed us to expand this immaterial plasticity to actual bodies. So the skin is no longer the immutable barrier that contains and defines the body in space. Instead, it becomes the site of continuous transmutation. He keeps writing, saying that while we try to cope with the consequences of this ongoing process, it is equally urgent to address the emergence of biotechnologies that operate beneath the skin and therefore out of sight. More than make visible the invisible, art needs to raise our awareness of what firmly remains beyond our visual reach, but which nonetheless affects us directly. So, his work and his writings, he always talks and merges scientific research and ethical inquiry, and also deals with the aesthetic dimension of art, and includes the technologies available, the more advanced technologies, and he tries to do art with that. So he's pushing the limits of what is known. Okay. some conclusions. Where do we locate meaning, and how do we process meaning in an experimental poem? Well, it's not enough to decode the words or linguistic scenes of the poem, if there is any. Many experimental poems do not have any words in the poem. So, not solely in the kinetic qualities and sound, not solely by using visual or spatial thinking models, not solely externally but internally. So we need to take into consideration many different factors. Thinking in mental images is only one of a number of other recognized forms of nonverbal thought, such as musical, mathematical thinking. So, structuralism views languages as an arbitrary and symbolic system of exchange. Saussure asserts that without language, thought is a vague, uncharted nebula. There are no pre-existing ideas, and nothing is distinct before the appearance of language. This model of language tends to elide the mediating role of the human mind in its models of representation. In this sense, perhaps embodied cognition models, in conjunction with the neurosciences, may help us to gain a better understanding of the non-verbal thought triggered by experimental poetry such as transgenic art. Okay. So we need to take into consideration an open notion of sign, an open notion of text. I think we have to go also study embodied elements that we disregarded before. And also the role of biotechnologies in the production of meaning, of artistic works like transgenic poetry. So we have a lot of lots of things to study. And I could conclude by saying that we need to take into account traditional and modern schools of thought. We need to take into account the poets, the writings about art from the poets themselves. I think they advance notions that academia takes on later on. And I think, well, these are just, I would end here by saying that we have a lot of different approaches that we can use, but we need probably a meta study in order to do systematic approaches that are kind of holistic. We would need teams of scholars or students who can take these different approaches and see what happens if this is a valid field of studies or not. Okay, well, I finished because it's already 15 minutes. Sorry, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Whilst it's morning here and it's evening at your place, I don't see people here falling asleep. So everybody thought it was a very interesting. Well, at least I thought it was very interesting. And I'm afraid my master thesis will need some adjustment still. There are new theories that I found via you. I at least have one question, but I would like some other people, if they would like to ask a question, they can do that.
Is the PowerPoint available for everybody?
Xavier Rules, he has done literary studies in Kent, and he's wondering if I may share your PowerPoint with him.
Of course.
The others, the other people here.
Yes, no problem. It's in fact this more than a PowerPoint. This was too heavy on text, isn't it? Too many words and too heavy. But yes, please go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
else has a question? No, Kila, who's the next speaker, she will start a PhD on poetry off the page. So I'm wondering if there something has sort of triggered her mind already.
Well, I was preparing, sorry for that, but I was wondering about the word verbal and what exactly is verbal and what is not.
Exactly. Yes.
Go on.
I use the word verbal as in the written language, in the structuralist sense of, associate the language and the signifiers and the signified. I mean, not linguistically speaking. I mean, the verbal as synonymous of linguistic meaning, written languages, like.
Okay.
And not versus, but or not opposed to, but alternatively we have other possible types of thought. Visual thinking, it's another one.